So your essay begins with an introduction, and so it will end with a conclusion. So listen to and watch this presentation for more information on conclusions. First of all, we'll start out with what they are, and as I mentioned just before in the previous slide, conclusions bring your essay to a close. It's the final paragraph of your essay. The idea is that you're going to leave your reader with some kind of a final impression. A lot of times we talk about that being a so what, maybe a statement or a so what paragraph, which reminds the readers of your main point, shows us the significance, why it was important that you wrote about this particular topic, described this particular place, told this particular story. And so it really leaves us with the reasoning and shows why it was important for you to tell your story or to explain your main point. It does leave readers with something to think about. Sometimes you'll include what's called a call to action, and so they may ponder, well, what is next? What does this essay mean for me? And then that last point is the idea that the conclusion might be circular. And what that means is that it refers back to the intro. So for example, if you started with a quote in your intro, you may end with a quote in your conclusion. If you started telling a story in the intro, you might finish that story in the conclusion. And so what it means by circular is that the beginning and the end are similar in how they reach their main point. And so that's a little bit about what conclusions are. The hardest part sometimes is how do you start your conclusion? And in the past, if you remember the 5-paragraph essay, the way that it was set up, if you remember that from high school, you ended your intro with your thesis statement and you began your conclusion with your thesis statement, restated in different words. And that's not a bad way to begin a conclusion at all. It's probably less creative in some ways, and so maybe more academic. And so you can always do that. That's an option. But these are other ways that you might begin your conclusion. In gray there, it talks about quotations, rhetorical questions. You can use humor. So any of the ways that you would have started your lead sentence in your introduction is fair game for how you might begin your conclusion. The second bullet suggests that you talk about the importance of your topic, and that was kind of that so what statement. So now that I'm finished with this so what, why should the reader care? Why do I care about this topic? Why is it important to me? And you can read that example that follows. You can also include a call to action. This is most of the time, you'll see this done in persuasive essays, but a call to action is, now that you've read it, what do you want the reader to do? If it's a persuasive essay, you might want them to go out and protest, or you might want them to write a letter, or you might want them to seek action from their legislators. So that's a call to action. For a descriptive essay, maybe you want them to appreciate something, or maybe you want them to go out and visit a place. But a call to action is, now that the reader has this information, what should they do with it? So you're suggesting that they go in and take action. You can summarize the important points, which is essentially the restatement of your thesis. You do want to make sure that you do that in a different way than you did in your introduction. You don't want to repeat your thesis statement. You may want to refer to that, but again, you don't want to restate it in exactly the same way. Some things to avoid. I mentioned this one before, so I won't spend a whole lot of time on it, but you don't want to restate your thesis in exactly the same way. You can bring up different points, the same points actually in a different manner. You can go over the main points of the entire essay, but you don't want to restate your thesis exactly. Other things that you don't want to do is to use words like in conclusion or in summary, in closing. If it's the last paragraph of your essay, your reader should understand that it is the conclusion. And so therefore, saying those kinds of things tends to be a little bit redundant. And so avoid using those in your conclusion. You don't ever want to apologize. You want to come across as an expert, even if you don't feel yourself as if you are one, perhaps. You don't want to apologize. So don't say, I may not know everything that there is about a topic. You don't want to say, um, to demean yourself as an author. Come across as being confident, even if you're not. So write those types of sentences. So this example talks about apologizing for being only a first-year college student, and it's the word only that makes that apologetic. If you have a very short paper, you don't want to summarize everything that you just said, because hopefully if it's short enough, people remember that, and if it was well written, they will remember. And so you want to avoid using a summary in a very short paper. A little bit more about conclusions. They tend to be the shortest paragraph of your essay, so they can be well written in a couple of sentences, 2, 3 perhaps in a 4-page paper. Some of them will get to be longer. You really want to avoid bringing up something new in your conclusion. You can call them to action, you can tell them to do something. You just don't want to bring up something completely different, because then that leaves the reader wanting more, and you don't want to do that in a conclusion. One thing that I will say with this presentation and with all others, I will attach the silent non-audio version, so you can kind of peruse that at your leisure. If you want to listen to this again and take notes, those are all things that are available for you. So I will attach this presentation in the content area of chapter or week 4.